My brother tried to end himself because of women like me. I spent years laughing at men's loneliness. But when he nearly died alone, I did something I never thought I'd do. Hey Reddit! I didn't plan on posting, but the first time I understood how alone my brother really was, it was already a medical emergency. I, 29 female, HR compliance lead at a regional freight rail yard in central Ohio. 40 plus acres of steel, diesel fumes, and men hauling coupling rods in the kind of heat that makes your boots stick to asphalt. The workforce is about 90% male. Switchmen, track inspectors, brake operators, yard engineers. Guys who clock in before sunrise and go home smelling like creosote and regret. I loved that job more than I should have. Not because of the mission statement or the dental plan, because I had authority over every single one of them. Attendance flags, conduct violation, grievance paperwork that could tank a guy's seniority after 15 years on the rail. All mine. The guys didn't like me. I knew that. I liked that. And honestly, I enjoyed it more than I should admit. I once wrote up a switchman named Hal, 22 years on the rail, 4 kids, arthritic knees, because he sat on a crate during a 12-hour shift and his supervisor flagged it as unauthorized break. Hal came to my office, voice shaking, asked if I could talk to his crew lead. I told him the policy was the policy. He left looking like I'd taken something from him he couldn't name. Something twitched in my chest. I killed it quick. That's how you knew the system was working. My brother Colton worked at the same yard. Different crew, different shift. He was on the night maintenance gang, the team that inspects track joints, replaces ties, and handles emergency repairs between midnight and 6 a.m. when the main lines go quiet. It's brutal, low visibility work, the kind of shift nobody volunteers for. You just end up there because you were the last one hired or the first one nobody fought to keep. The pay was decent for entry level, about $21 an hour with a $2.50 night differential, but the hours chewed through people. Most guys lasted 8 months. Colton had been on nights for almost 2 years. He was 27, 2 years younger than me. Built like our dad, wiry, quiet, hands that looked 10 years older than his face. Hoodie permanently gray with rail dust. He used to be the funny one in the family, the kid who'd crack jokes at the dinner table until mom threatened to kick us both out. Somewhere between graduating high school and clocking his 400th graveyard shift, the joke stopped. He still remembered my coffee order, though. Large, dark roast, 2 sugars, no cream. Sometimes he'd leave one outside my office door when his shift ended early. No note. Just the cup, still warm, sitting on the concrete like a habit I never asked him to start. One evening, he swung by my office before his shift started. Asked to borrow a power drill and some wall anchors. Said he needed to mount blackout curtains in his studio apartment because the morning sun kept wrecking his sleep schedule and his landlord wouldn't handle it. I told him sure. Tossed the drill case on the desk. He picked it up carefully, like it weighed more than it should. Then he mentioned Jolene. Not by name at first, just, this girl I've been seeing. Said she was coming over that weekend. Wanted the place to look decent. I caught something in his voice. Not excitement exactly. More like relief. Like someone had finally texted him back after years of nothing. I smirked. Told him, don't try too hard. She should like you for you. He gave me the half smile. Then he headed for the bus, boots squeaking down the hall, drill case tucked under his arm. At the door, he turned back. You eating dinner tonight? I waved him off. Yeah. Don't worry about me. Gone before I could even reopen my inbox. I didn't ask anything about the girl. Not her last name. Not how they met. Not whether she was good to him. Because honestly, I didn't think it mattered. He was a grown man. Men don't run out of options. That's what I told myself. A few weeks later, corporate dropped a men's wellness initiative in my inbox. My name listed as site coordinator. Mandatory presentation. 2 weeks out. I groaned loud enough for the hallway to hear. I'd built dozens of slide decks before. Stress management, work-life balance, feel-good quotes over stock photos. Management claps. Nothing changes. That was the formula. But men's wellness? I didn't even know what to Google, so I just started Googling. And I ran face first into a wall of data I was not ready for. Suicide rates among men. 4 times higher than women. Most of them under 40. Some younger than Colton. I thought about him in his dust-streaked hoodie with his cracked hands and his blank phone screen. But no, not him. He was just tired from nights. He was fine. I sat back, crossed my arms. Men are reckless, that's all. Even if some of them feel lonely. Isn't that on them? I floated the stat over burnt coffee with the admin girls the next morning. They snorted, called it male ego, called me a pick-me for pushing back. I forced a laugh and swallowed it. Started building the slide deck. Stock photos of beach meditation, bullet points about gratitude journals, appearance over substance. I knew how to play that game. That night, 10:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. Colton. First thing out of his mouth wasn't about himself. You doing okay? You sounded stressed last time we talked. I rolled my eyes even though he couldn't see it. Told him I was fine. Swamped with this wellness thing. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner that week. Said he'd found a spot that did a solid brisket plate, only 10 minutes from the yard gate. I told him I couldn't. Busy. Meeting the girls. Had leftovers anyway. Silence on the line. Then quietly, yeah. Just didn't want to sit at the counter by myself again. I told him he'd be fine. He said, yeah, night. Click. I stared at the phone for 2 seconds. My thumb hovered over the callback button, plugged it in, went to bed. I met her once, about 6 weeks after Colton first mentioned her. Family cookout at our mom's place. Jolene showed up in a sundress, bright smile, and helped mom carry the cooler without being asked. Asked real questions, remembered names. She even knew the yard ran freight, not passenger, which meant Colton had actually talked about his life with someone. Mom loved her immediately. I thought she might be good for him. What I didn't notice, or chose not to notice, was how Colton acted around her, quieter than usual. Let her finish his sentences. Laughed only after she laughed first. She told a story about him falling asleep at her place and snoring like a freight engine, and the whole table cracked up. Colton laughed too, but his eyes were somewhere else entirely. He sat holding a paper plate he hadn't touched, shrinking into himself in a way I'd never seen from him before. Over the next few months, things started to shift. Colton stopped calling me as often. When he did, Jolene was always audible in the background. A TV, a sharp comment, a door closing hard. He started canceling small plans. Couldn't do breakfast anymore. Couldn't help move that shelf. Jolene needs me for something, became his default answer, delivered flat and automatic, like he'd rehearsed it. I didn't think twice. He had a girlfriend now. Of course he was less available. Guy gets a woman's attention, he vanishes. Standard operating procedure. What I didn't see, because I wasn't looking, was that Jolene was draining him. Not constantly. That's what made her effective. She'd cook for him sometimes, text good morning before his shifts, gave just enough warmth that the cold always felt like his fault. But she didn't work, and she always needed money. Her car payment, a security deposit for a lease she never signed. Just Venmo me, and I'll handle it. Colton handed it over, because he thought she was building something with him. Steady stream, zero accountability. He was pulling 60-hour weeks on the night crew just to cover it. He mentioned once that he was behind on his electric bill by 2 months. I told him he needed to budget better. Didn't ask why. She cut him off from everyone so slowly he didn't see it happening. Colton had one friend at the yard, a guy named Garrett on the track crew who'd swap shifts with him and grab a meal after work. Jolene told Colton that Garrett had said something disrespectful about her at a crew lunch. Complete fabrication, but Colton believed her because Jolene cried when she said it. He stopped answering Garrett's texts. Garrett told me later he figured Colton just got busy. Nobody pushed, nobody checked. One small lie, and a man's only friendship evaporates like it was nothing. Behind his back, she was telling anyone who'd listen, the landlord, mutual acquaintances, a woman at his apartment complex, that Colton was unstable, and she was afraid of him. None of it was true. She was planting seeds, making sure everyone already saw her as the victim, so that when things blew up, she'd have the story locked down before Colton ever opened his mouth. The worst part? Colton internalized all of it. He started apologizing for things that didn't need apologies. Apologizing for being tired, for not texting back fast enough, for existing in the wrong tone of voice. He was being dismantled, and I was sitting in my office 3 buildings over, writing people up for clocking in 4 minutes late. One Thursday around 9 p.m., Colton texted me, "You free this weekend? I want to talk about something." I responded, "Slammed. Maybe next week?" He didn't reply. I didn't follow up. Presentation day. I stood in front of roughly 30 rail yard workers in reflective vests and steel-toed boots, all crammed into the break hall on folding chairs, projector humming. The room smelled like old coffee and diesel. Title slide, Men's Wellness Week. Subtitle, Healthy Habits, Healthy Mind. I opened with my practiced HR voice. Warm, confident, emotionally airtight. Stock photo of a man in a polo shirt meditating on a beach. Teeth white, posture perfect. Zero resemblance to anyone in the room. Mindfulness can reduce stress by up to 60%. Next time you feel overwhelmed, just pause. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. A few guys shifted in their seats, eyes half closed from 12-hour shifts. Someone in the second row had his arms crossed so tight, he looked like he was holding himself together. Someone in the back muttered something I couldn't catch. A couple of heads bowed like they were hiding reactions they didn't want me to see. Then a hand went up. Third row. Older guy. Rough hands, creased face, voice like gravel in a bucket. What if you go home and nobody would notice if you didn't come back? The room went dead silent, not quiet, dead. 30 guys staring at me like I was holding something they needed, and they were waiting to see if I'd actually hand it over. The projector fan was the loudest thing in the building. My throat locked. I had no slide for this. No bullet point. No cheerful stock image. This wasn't in the deck because I hadn't imagined anyone would say something that real in a room full of coworkers. I forced a professional smile. Well, that's exactly why prevention matters, right? Click to the next slide before he could respond. His eyes stayed on me. Not angry. Not hostile. Just hollow. Like he'd asked me for something real, and I gave him a pamphlet. I wrapped up with the closer I'd rehearsed. Remember? Balance is key. Your health is your strength. Strong minds build strong teams. No applause. The guys stood up slow, chairs scraping linoleum, boots dragging. They filed out like the room was underwater. Nobody said a word. My inbox lit up within the hour. Great kickoff. Excellent messaging. Strong engagement. Management was thrilled. I leaned back in my chair and told myself it went well. Something felt off, but the praise was loud enough to drown it. That afternoon, Colton texted, "Dinner tonight? Feels like forever since we ate together." He'd already texted me that Thursday, asking if I was free that weekend, saying he wanted to talk about something. This was his second try in the same week. I stared at it for a few seconds. Thought about saying yes. Thought about how easy it would be to just drive 10 minutes and sit across from my own brother for one meal. Then I thought about the girls' dinner I'd already committed to and the leftover pad thai in my fridge, and how tired I was from performing wellness for 30 men who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I replied, "Can't. Meeting the girls later. Got leftovers anyway." He typed, deleted, typed again. Then, "Yeah, it's just quiet here. Thought it'd be nice to sit with someone for once." One text. That's all it was. One text that I could have read as what it actually was. A man telling his sister he was alone and didn't want to be. Instead, I read it as inconvenience, as neediness, as something a grown man should handle without involving me. I sent back, "You'll be fine. Next time." Thumbs up emoji. That was it. Monday morning. Half asleep at my desk, eyes glazed on the attendance dashboard. One flag jumped out. Employee Colton. 3 consecutive no-shows. Night maintenance supervisor had tried calling. No answer. Address check requested. My stomach dropped for a half second, but I brushed it off fast. Graveyard guys ghost shifts all the time. The hours eat people alive. I flagged it as pending follow-up and moved to the next file. Told myself it was nothing. Wednesday, the flag came back. Red this time. Supervisor note attached. Attempted contact multiple times. No response. Requesting in-person welfare check. I grabbed my jacket, muttered, "I'll handle it," to nobody. Drove over. Streets too quiet for mid-morning. His building looked the same. Paint peeling, blinds drawn tight. Parking lot empty, except for a dumpster, and a stray cat sitting on the curb, like it was waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. I knocked. Waited. Nothing. Knocked harder, the kind of knock that shakes the door frame. Silence. My phone was slick in my hand when I called the landlord. He showed up 10 minutes later with the building super trailing behind, keys jangling. Door opened. First thing I noticed, blackout curtains still sealed in their packaging. The drill I'd lent him sitting on the counter, unopened. He'd never hung them. Never even tried. Second, his phone on the kitchen table, face up. A dozen missed calls stacked on the lock screen. 3 from me, all from the past 48 hours, all professional welfare check calls. Not a single personal one. Third, the air. Heavy, still, unmoving. Like the apartment itself had stopped breathing days ago. Sink full of crusted dishes. Coffee cups lined up on the counter like a timeline nobody was supposed to read. Sandwich wrappers piled by the trash. Laundry basket half folded. Shirts stuffed in, but never put away. A list on the fridge in his messy handwriting. Electric/call dentist/try meetup/text sis. That last one circled twice. Pen marks pressed so hard they'd carved into the paper. A folded flyer on his desk. Community game night. $5 entry. Creases worn into it like he'd picked it up, pocketed it, maybe stood outside the door of whatever church basement it was held in, and then walked home alone. We moved toward the back room. I'm not going to describe what we found in detail. I won't do that to him, and I won't do it to you. What I'll say is that my brother was there, and he was barely alive, and it was clear he had been lying there for days. The landlord said something quiet. The super already had his phone out dialing 911. I couldn't cross the doorway. Just stood there, hands braced against the frame, watching his chest rise in shallow intervals, so faint I wasn't sure I was imagining it. On his phone, no lock, cracked screen, cheap Android he never bothered to secure. The search history was still open. How to make friends in your late 20s. Is it weird for men to eat alone? And one unsent text draft sitting in his messages app. You free for dinner? No recipient. Just a blinking cursor where a name should have been, waiting for me to give him someone to send it to. I didn't cry. Not there. My jaw locked so tight I thought my molars would crack. The paramedics arrived in 9 minutes. They took him to Grant Medical Center. I followed the ambulance doing 65 and a 40. At the ER, they wouldn't let me pass the double doors. 3 hours later, a doctor came out. Colton was alive, stabilized, but he was in a coma. Induced at first, then sustained because his body wasn't responding. ICU ventilator, feeding tube. The doctor said, guarded prognosis, and we'll know more in 72 hours. I just kept thinking about the drill on his counter and the curtain still sealed in plastic. When it hit me, really hit me, something locked into place behind my ribs. Then Jolene showed up, not to sit vigil, to perform. 2 days after Colton was admitted, she appeared at the ICU nursing station claiming she was his domestic partner and requesting access to his room and medical information. The charge nurse asked if she was on his HIPAA authorization. She wasn't. Emergency contact? That was me. No legal documentation, no partnership filing, nothing. Visitor access for non-family was restricted during ICU stays. Jolene filed a formal complaint, posted on social media that night about being kept from the man she loved by a vindictive family member. The landlord didn't stop her on a separate front. She showed up at Colton's apartment the same week, crying, and took his TV, his Bluetooth speaker, a jacket she claimed was hers, and, I discovered later, $1,400 in cash from an envelope in his dresser drawer. Overtime money he'd been saving for months. She knew it was there because she'd watched him put it there. The ICU waiting room became its own kind of static. Beige walls, folding chairs, coffee and paper cups nobody touched. I was there every day. But word got around the yard, and slowly, guys started showing up. Boots scuffed but cleaned just enough to show they'd tried. They sat stiff, hats in their laps, eyes on the floor. One by one, a few drifted up to me. His night crew supervisor said, "Never missed a shift. Always stayed late if we needed him." A neighbor from his building mumbled, "He fed my cat once when I was out of town." Polite kid. Garrett, the co-worker Jolene had chased away, stood near the vending machines the entire time and never said anything. Just kept looking at his hands. Every story was the same shape. Colton did the right thing. Colton showed up. Colton helped, but nobody actually knew him. Just a guy who showed up, did his job, went home, and nobody knew what happened after that. An older guy from the yard, gray hair, 30 years on the rail, lingered beside me near the ICU door, cleared his throat, and said something I'll never forget. Most men go their whole lives without anyone hugging them, unless it's their mother when they're small. Sometimes not even then. A man could go decades and the last real hug he ever got was before he could tie his own shoes. Asked if that was really true. He shrugged. Depends on whether someone notices before it's too late. Then he patted my shoulder once, like punctuation, and walked away. The waiting room emptied slow. Men filing out, boots dragging, hands shoved in pockets. No speeches, no wailing, just silence thick enough to choke on. I stayed behind staring through the narrow window of Colton's ICU room. Tubes in his arms, monitors tracing lines that meant he was still here, but not really here. Jolene didn't come to the hospital again after being denied. She posted about it on social media instead. A black and white photo of her hand holding a candle. Caption, "Some pain doesn't have words." She had plenty of words when she wanted his stuff 2 days earlier, though. 2 weeks after the admission, I was back at my desk. Inbox stacked, coffee cold, a knock at the doorframe. One of the floor guys, same one I'd written up for attendance the month before. Hands jammed in his hoodie pockets, eyes on the carpet. He mumbled, "Just wanted to say thanks for that wellness thing you did." I blinked. His voice was barely above a whisper, like he was embarrassed to be saying it out loud. I sat up in my chair, gave him the professional smile. "Of course, that's what the program's for." He nodded too quick. "Yeah." Then he shuffled off, boots dragging, like he regretted opening his mouth the second the words left it. After he was gone, I leaned back and exhaled through my nose. That man had come to my door for something real, and I handed him a corporate tagline. Men really are starving for someone to notice them, and all I'd given anyone was Canva clip art and stock photos of salad. Funny how even scraps look like a meal when you haven't eaten in months. Later that same day, I passed 2 guys leaning against the vending machine in the hallway. Voices low, shoulders slumped like the machine was the only thing keeping them vertical. One of them said, "Wes missed again, 3rd time this month." The other shook his head. "Ever since his girl left, man just goes home to nothing. Empty apartment and a chair." They went quiet. Like the words weighed too much to carry any further. I stirred my coffee louder than necessary, pretending I wasn't listening, but the words stuck to me like rail dust. Empty, hollow. I thought about how every call with Colton started with, "You good?" And how I always shot back, "I'm fine. Focus on yourself," like his concern was a chore I didn't have time for. The stat flickered in my head again. 4 times more likely. I swallowed it down, sipped the burnt coffee, and told myself it was just gossip. But something had shifted. The gossip didn't feel like gossip anymore. It felt like evidence. Guilt makes you stupid, or it makes you precise. I went with precise. I didn't go scorched earth immediately. 3 years in HR taught me that emotion without documentation is just noise, and noise gets thrown out the second it hits a courtroom. So I started building a file. The landlord gave me a signed statement about Jolene's visit, what she took, when she came, what she claimed. The lease was Colton's name only. No co-tenant, no second key ever issued. She had zero legal right to be in that apartment. I petitioned for emergency conservatorship through the county probate court. 3 weeks to get approved. When I finally pulled Colton's bank statements, the pattern was immediate. Regular Venmo transfers to Jolene's account. Over 8 months. Just north of $6,200. Car payments she never made. Medical bills that didn't exist. A security deposit for a lease she never signed. Every dollar one directional. I printed all of it. I tracked down 3 people who'd witnessed Jolene's behavior firsthand. Garrett, a downstairs neighbor, a mutual acquaintance she'd told over coffee that Colton was mentally unstable. All 3 gave written statements. Garrett also mentioned that Jolene had once called the yard's front desk pretending to be an emergency contact and talked a temp receptionist into giving up Colton's pay rate. Data breach. I documented that too. During this time, Jolene was not sitting still. She caught wind that I was asking questions and launched her counteroffensive, posted vague things on social media about supporting Colton's recovery and being targeted by a family member who can't accept their own guilt, called people Colton had known and painted me as deranged, told a woman from our mom's church group that I was obsessed and dangerous. And then she called my mother, cried on the phone for 40 minutes, told mom she'd loved Colton more than anyone and that I was harassing her during the worst time of her life. Mom believed it. For nearly 3 weeks, my own mother wouldn't return my calls because Jolene had gotten to her first. That almost broke me. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage one night and just gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. I'd started doom-scrolling loneliness statistics at 2 a.m., like it was going to wake him up. My inbox at work was a mess. I'd snapped at a floor supervisor over a minor form error and had to apologize in front of his whole crew. I was unraveling, and the worst part was knowing that Jolene was counting on exactly that. She wanted me emotional. She wanted me to do something impulsive, something she could point to and say, "See? Unhinged," just like I told everyone. So I stopped, took a breath, opened the file, kept going. I filed small claims for the $1,400 cash and the stolen property. Jolene showed up in a black dress with a tissue, told the judge they'd been planning to move in together. Judge asked for documentation. She had none. I had the lease, the landlord's statement, and 8 months of bank records flowing one direction. She lost. Ordered to pay $2,100 total, the cash plus the value of the TV and speaker. She paid it in grudging installments over 7 months. The woman who drained $6,200 from a man working graveyard shifts suddenly couldn't find $2,100. Funny how that math works, but I wasn't done. While securing Colton's apartment, I'd found envelopes from the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services addressed to Jolene at his address. Subsidized phone program, utility assistance. She'd listed his apartment as her residential address on state benefit applications. She never lived there, never had a key. Different zip code entirely. I reported it to the state fraud hotline with the lease, her real address, and the benefit correspondence. Jolene tried to file a protection order against me during the investigation. Denied. She couldn't produce a single piece of evidence I'd ever contacted her directly. Everything I'd done went through a courtroom clerk, a public records office, or a notarized statement. She couldn't fight paper with performance. The fraud finding landed in month 5. $3,800 repayment order, benefit profile permanently flagged. Enhanced scrutiny on every future application she'd ever file. Not a felony, not handcuffs, but a permanent paper trail. I also turned the yard's data breach into a formal policy revision and incident report filed with the state labor board, Jolene's name on it. The kind of detail that makes a future employer's legal team real uncomfortable, real fast. The last face-to-face happened in a courthouse hallway, month 8. I was there for a compliance hearing related to the benefits fraud repayment schedule. Jolene was there because she'd tried to appeal the repayment amount and lost. I was sitting on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, file on my lap, when she came around the corner. She stopped. I watched her cycle through options in real time. Tears, anger, victimhood, indifference. She picked anger, walked up, voice low, vibrating. You think you're better than me? You ignored him too. I didn't stand up. Didn't match her energy. Yeah, I did. Difference is I'm not pretending I didn't. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. He loved me. He sent you $6,200 and you couldn't name his coffee order. She stood there for 5 seconds, then turned and walked down the hallway, heels clicking on tile. Didn't look back. I sat on that bench for another 20 minutes, not savoring anything. My hands were shaking, and I didn't trust my legs. Revenge is supposed to feel like a victory lap. This felt like filing the last piece of paperwork on a life that deserved so much more than paperwork. Month 9. Jolene's final small claims installment cleared. I got the confirmation call from the county clerk's office, printed the receipt, and added it to the file. The file was thick now, over an inch of paper held together with a binder clip. Every statement, every transaction log, every court date, every denied petition she'd filed against me. All of it clean. All of it on the record. All of it the kind of boring, bureaucratic damage that nobody writes articles about, but absolutely ruins your next 5 years. I know this because I watched it happen. A mutual acquaintance told me Jolene applied for a new apartment that same month. Nicer complex. Gated entry. The kind of place that runs a background and credit check before they even hand you the application. She filled out the paperwork, smiled at the leasing agent, probably rehearsed her little speech about fresh starts and putting the past behind her. Then they ran her name. Small claims judgment, active. State fraud repayment, active. Flagged benefit status, active. The leasing office didn't call her back. She called them. Twice. Left a voicemail the second time. They never responded. She didn't find out with a phone call or a letter. She found out the same way Colton did, with silence. No explanation, no confrontation, just a door that used to open and doesn't anymore, and nobody on the other side willing to tell you why. Here's what a paper trail does when nobody's watching. The small claims judgment went on her court record. Public. Searchable. The first thing any landlord or employer sees. The fraud determination stacked a $3,800 repayment on top of it and flagged her benefit profile permanently. 2 monthly obligations she couldn't cover at the same time meant late fees, then collections, then a credit score that gets rental applications auto-denied and phone plans asking for a cosigner. And the labor board incident report? Not criminal, but it sits in a state filing system where any background check can find it. The Victim Act works until the system has receipts. Then it's just an act. She didn't get cuffs. She got a permanent paper trail. And paper doesn't forget, doesn't forgive, and doesn't care how hard you cry in a courtroom. Meanwhile, at the yard, I did something that honestly shocked me more than anyone. I went back to the wellness initiative. Not because corporate asked, because my brother was in a hospital bed, breathing through a machine, and I couldn't shake the image of that man in the third row, asking a real question and getting a stock photo of lettuce in response. I scrapped the entire slide deck, built a peer check-in program instead, voluntary, shift-based. No presentations, no vision boards, no meditation apps. Just a sign-up sheet where guys could pair up and agree to check on each other once a week. If someone missed 3 consecutive check-ins, a flag went to their crew lead, not HR. Someone who knew their name and their handshake. 18 guys signed up the first month. By month 3, it was 41. I didn't take credit publicly, didn't want it, didn't deserve it. Colton woke up in month 6. Not like in the movies where the eyes snap open and someone says the protagonist's name. A nurse called me on a Tuesday afternoon and said he'd shown purposeful movement. By Wednesday, he was tracking light. By Friday, he was blinking in response to yes or no questions. He couldn't speak for another 2 weeks. When he finally did, the first word was garbled. The second, 3 days later, was water. The third was my name. I was sitting next to his bed when he said it. I just leaned forward and said, I'm here. Colton is in outpatient rehab now. Occupational therapy twice a week. Cognitive exercises that frustrate him because his brain knows what it wants to say, and his mouth takes an extra second to cooperate. He walks with a slight drag on his left side that the therapist says might improve over the next year. Might. He moved into a ground floor unit closer to Mom's house. I hung the blackout curtains myself. Used the same drill. The wall anchors were still in the case. I drive past his old building sometimes. New tenant now. Someone put up different curtains in the window. The community game night flyer is gone from the board in the lobby, replaced by a dog walking co-op sign-up. Life moved on without asking anyone's permission. That's what life does. At work, I still run compliance, still process the flags and the write-ups and the grievance forms. But I read them differently now. Every attendance string that turns red, I pause. I look at the name behind the employee number. I think about what the form doesn't say, about the coffee cups lined up on a counter like a timeline, about the unsent texts and the game night flyers folded into pockets and never used. I don't talk about what happened at work, not to the admin girls, not to management. When people ask about Colton, I say the right things, that he's recovering, that he's tough, that I even ran the company's first men's wellness week while he was still working nights, like that was some kind of proof that I'd done my part. I don't mention the missed dinners. I don't mention the calls I let go to voicemail. I don't mention, you'll be fine. I just say I tried. And most days, I almost believe it. Last week, I brought him a coffee. Large dark roast, 2 sugars, no cream. Set it on his rehab center side table, the same way he used to set one outside my office door. No note, just the cup, still warm. He looked at it, then at me. His face softened in a way I hadn't seen since before the graveyard shifts, and Jolene and all the silence I'd let pile up between us. He picked it up with his good hand, took a sip. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yeah, I said. I know. We sat there for 10 minutes without talking. The rehab center hummed around us, wheelchairs, intercoms, someone's physical therapy session echoing down the hall. None of it mattered. He was there, and I was there, and neither of us had anywhere else to be. I still haven't told him about the file, about the small claims case, the fraud finding, the paper trail I built one notarized statement at a time while he was lying in a hospital bed unable to blink on command. He doesn't need to know yet. Maybe ever. That's between me and a binder clip. But Jolene's credit report, her benefit eligibility, her clean record, those I fixed permanently. And the calls I didn't answer, the dinners I turned down, the "you'll be fine" I sent to a man who was anything but, that I'm fixing now. One coffee at a time, one Tuesday rehab visit at a time, one silence that doesn't feel empty anymore. It's not enough, but he's here, and I'm not waving him off anymore. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.